A lot of times women are being dismissed. When they go to the doctor, they're like, "Oh, everything's normal, everything's fine." And when I can look at someone's labs and tell them, "You're not crazy, you're not wrong, and by the way, there's a solution for this. What you're feeling is real."
Electricast. Welcome to Season 4 of Transforming 45. I'm your host, Lisa Boat, and this season we're stepping fully into our power. The heat, the hormones, the heartbreak, the healing. This is Midlife, raw and redefined. Each episode, you'll hear stories of humans who are rewriting the rules, reclaiming their bodies, their desires, their voices. This is where we stop shrinking, start shining, and remember who the hell we are. Because midlife isn't a crisis, it's an awakening. Let's get transforming 45. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Transforming 45. This week, I am really happy to welcome back our guest today, Claudine François. She is a board-certified functional medicine and holistic health practitioner, author of Your Midlife Body Code, her new book. So excited to talk about that today. It's a powerful guide for driven women who are done feeling exhausted, foggy, and frustrated in their own bodies. Claudine, welcome to the show. So glad you're here today.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
All right. So I love having return guests and asking the same question because it's been a couple of years since the last time you were here. So, Claudine, who are you now? And how did the intervening life introduce you to this version?
Well, who am I now? So, like as you mentioned, I'm now a functional health practitioner. And I realized that with my background in accounting, because I spent 20 years as a CFO in corporate America, I really loved data. So even though I was drawn to health because of my own health issues, having the functional data of actual lab results and helping women in that way was so much more exciting to me. And I found it gave me so much better results because I could tell you all day long, drink more water, exercise more, get more sleep, all the things that you probably already know anyway. But when I have actual functional data pointing to, well, your nervous system is on high alert all the time, and that's why your body won't let go of weight. Or you are, your estrogen is low, which is why you're having sleepless nights or extra belly fat or more aches and pains, or, a lot of times women are being dismissed. Right? When they go to the doctor, they're like, "Oh, everything's normal, everything's fine." And when I can look at someone's labs and tell them, "You're not crazy, you're not wrong, and by the way, there's a solution for this. What you're feeling is real, and I know how to fix it," that empowers them and it makes them feel like someone is listening to them, that they are heard. So that's what I get excited about. That's why I am where I am, because I found this little crevice where I could live, this little niche where I come alive and it helps other women. And I was just so excited to share it. I had to write the book.
Yeah. So what was the initial push to write this book?
Well, it really just came from working with women and saying the same things over and over again, right? And I realized, okay, not everyone's going to be able to work with me. Right. And so I wanted other people to have this method, but B, I wanted to write the things I was saying down into the actual steps that I'm taking women through to get from frustrated, foggy, exhausted, not getting results to the place where they feel like themselves again. They understand their body. They don't feel like their body's working against them anymore, that they understand what I call the clues, like the data points their body is giving them are actual clues to what they need to do to get results.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit about the lab work because there's, as you know, being in this space, that it is a double-edged sword of living in a time when there's a huge influx in knowledge and understanding about something. Because while that is happening, there's also misinformation or things that aren't fully understood is another way I think is really important to look at it. Earlier on in this menopause journey, what I was hearing from folks more often than not was, I went to my doctor, I got a blood test. They said that my estrogen actually is really high, and so I can't possibly be in perimenopause. 2.5 years ago, that's what I was hearing all the time. So the message was, you don't need a blood test to tell you that you are in perimenopause. which is true. We don't use a blood test to diagnose, for lack of a better word, perimenopause. And now I'm hearing more than anything, don't get a blood test. It doesn't tell you anything. You don't need that. And that also is not true. So I would love to hear your thoughts on sort of this trajectory and evolution and where you see labs being really, really useful and how women can go about asking for them to get the information they really need.
I love that you bring this up because, yes, everything you say you just said is true. How can how can all of those things be true? And it's really the nuance that you can't get from a reel on Instagram. And this is why social media sometimes drives me nuts because I'll see someone post something and I'm like, caveat, 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 right?
Exactly.
So you are correct in saying you cannot diagnose perimenopause in a blood test. You really can't diagnose perimenopause. Well, first of all, blood tests are one moment in time. Okay. And the problem with blood labs is that you are getting hormones are what's called pulsatile, meaning they go up and down all day long and they change throughout our cycle. And when you're in perimenopause, how do you even know where you're in your cycle? Let's start there, right? Because I'll use myself for example. I just turned 50. I had my period 2.5 weeks ago and I'm having it again now. And prior to that, I hadn't had it for like 2 months. So who knows where I am in my cycle, right?
I hear you, sister. I'm right there.
Yeah. So the blood test, when they take the blood test, who knows if you're at the top of where the hormones are, or you're at the bottom of the curve. So you don't really know. And the body protects the blood at all costs. So a lot of measures in blood don't show up until they're an absolute huge problem. So when I use blood labs for people, one, I'm looking at it from that perspective of I have to look at it from a functional lens. So my ranges are tighter, right? The lab range is just the average of all the people who take that test, whereas the functional range is where you want to be, right? So it's a very different way of looking at it. But also knowing that, well, who knows if we got this in the right space? If you're looking at hormones, who knows if we got this, at the upswing or the downswing? So the test that I like to use when looking at hormones is actually a stress and hormone panel. It's called the Dutch. I don't know if you've heard of the Dutch. It stands for Dried Urine Test for Comprehensive Hormones. It's not the people with the wooden shoes. It's an acronym.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah,
That's
I heard
important.
people say that. They're like, what? This is like something from Holland? And I'm like, no, not the tulips. So that test tells me how much chronic stress a woman has had in her life and where we are in the pattern. Are we in the pattern of acute stress? I'm at the point where I get up every day and I've got 5 million things going and I can do them all. Or are we at the point where I've done all that for 20 years and I'm tapped out? Right. And that plays a huge role in our hormones and I hear this a lot about testosterone, like, oh, we're going to take testosterone here and there. Testosterone is very, very responsive to where our cortisol is. If we are stressed out all the time and our cortisol is on high alert, your testosterone takes a back seat because your body, it uses the same building blocks to make testosterone and all the other hormones as cortisol. So who knows until you look at a test like this, whether or not your hormones are low because you're in perimenopause or because you're stressed out or, 500 other different reasons, you won't know unless you get different data than a blood test can give you.
Yes. And that's so important. And looking at a broad spectrum, right? Because I have had folks also who have come back to me and said, my physician just ordered estrogen, testosterone, progesterone. That's all they wanted to check. And that is really limiting the information that a person gets. So my response always is tests can be useful if we are looking at a broad spectrum. So we know many different factors that are happening in your body. And then also looking at it as trends over time. This one test that happens in this one moment is not going to give you the full picture of everything that's happening in your body all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing I wanted to talk to you about with the Dutch test is I've heard different perspectives on it. That one, it can be really useful if you have a practitioner who's really skilled at reading it and knowing what that test is actually telling you. Because I've also had people come back and say, I did the Dutch test and I don't know. I don't understand any more than I did before. So what would you say to people who are thinking about getting one? What do they most need to know to take from those results?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said you have to work with a practitioner who knows what they're doing. The other thing I think we have to decondition ourselves from is thinking, oh, I just run one test for one problem. Because your body doesn't operate in a vacuum, right? Your hormones aren't separate from your gut, aren't separate from your brain, aren't separate from your liver, aren't separate from everything else going on in your body. And you probably know this, but there's an estrogen receptor on every system of your body, right? So when your estrogen starts to decrease, this is why when women start to have, say, heart palpitations in their late 40s, or they start to have frozen shoulder, or they start to have brain fog or memory issues, they're sent to all these different specialists who don't really understand this isn't a problem for the specialist. This is a problem for a very skilled OBGYN or functional medicine practitioner who's skilled in menopause, someone who understands what's happening in the woman's body. But to your point, we really need to look at the whole picture, right? That's why in the book, I talk about the 3 or 4 main tests that I always run, because your gut health can have a huge impact on your hormones. So if you're not looking at the gut, you don't really know why your hormones, again, I was mentioning earlier, there could be a lot of reasons why your estrogen, progesterone, testosterone are out of alignment. And it could be that you have leaky gut, or you have, SIBO, or you have some other kind of gut issue that's happening that's stressing your body out. And so your body, when it's stressed out, it doesn't produce hormones, right? If you're running away from the tiger, it's like, what do I need hormones for? I need to run away from the tiger. So we look at the gut. We definitely look at minerals, because your body can't make anything without minerals, right? They're the little tugboats that get everything where it needs to go. So, and a lot of women who come to me are very depleted in either sodium, potassium, or calcium, magnesium, or really any of the main 4 minerals. And that's why they're sluggish. That's why their thyroid isn't working. That's why their blood sugar is out of whack. I mean, there's so many things that those 4 minerals impact. So yes, getting out of this one test will tell me the one thing I need to know so I can fix the one thing. It's really looking at the body holistically, because your body is working, everything in it is working together to get you to what you need to do.
That's right. It's an integrated system.
Yes.
Right. Which is the problem of going. So many people will say that my GP didn't know what to do with me. And so they've sent me to a gynecologist, and then they go to the gynecologist, and the gynecologist is like, I don't know. What are you doing here? I got babies being born over here, and I don't know what to do with you. Right.
Yeah.
So because perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause is so much more than just a gynecological issue. It is not just the vagina and the reproductive organs. It is our entire system. And I don't know if you've been seeing this post, but over the last couple of days in my social media feed has been this product that it's like a little machine, and I think it's either a urine dip or a saliva, and you put it into the machine and it reads your hormones. And so over the course of like a couple of months, it can tell you whether you're in perimenopause or menopause or not.
I have not seen this machine.
I just started like flooding my feed, and I had this like immediate, super annoyed reaction to it for this reason. One, you don't need a machine to tell you that you are in perimenopause. Part of it is learning to tune into and trust the messages that are coming from our body. Can that information be helpful? Sure, maybe. Maybe seeing how your hormones are fluctuating over time, maybe that can be useful and helpful. But you don't need that machine to tell you that you are in perimenopause. And it is looking at a very limited source of data when we need to be looking at the whole picture. So if you see it, tell me what you think.
I love what you said about we need to be listening to and trusting our body, because I talk about that a lot in the book. I actually have a symptom decoder guide, which says, this is your symptom. Look at these different
Yes.
areas of your body, and these are the things you can do. Because we think of symptoms as annoyances that need to be tamped down. And some of us tamp them down with a pharmaceutical, right? Because they're annoying. You want to get rid of them. But I look at symptoms as clues. Your
Yes.
body doesn't have a way of communicating with you other than the symptoms. So it is trying to get your attention. It is trying to tell you something. And so when you have the key, the answer code to this is a symptom, this is what it means, then you actually have power. Then you know that you can do something rather than just being frustrated with it or getting this pharmaceutical drug, this prescription, this, all these different pills that end up hurting you in other ways.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so one of the strategies I always recommend is just start tracking your symptoms, right? Just write them down. It also doesn't have to be a big thing. Like literally, you could write them on a piece of paper and just be like, this date, this thing happened. Like make it as simple for yourself as possible. But look at that data. Like write down the things that you are experiencing. I love how you said, like, this is how you take back control. You don't need something outside of yourself to tell you what your body is already telling you. We just have to pay attention to it. So, in that theme, what do you see that is keeping women stuck the most?
I think what's keeping women stuck is that we feel like we need to be doing all the things all the time. And so many of us are in nervous system overload or burnout or whatever you want to call it. We're overstressed, we're overextended. And so your body literally cannot do any repair when you're in that state. I call it underfueling and overperforming, right? So women are pushing harder than they need to, and it is stressing their body out, and then it can't do the repair cycle. And then we wonder why things start breaking down. Like if you never get an oil change on your car, you're going to have problems, right?
Yes, exactly.
You're not listening to the clinks and clunks of your body
Mhm.
and addressing them, you're also going to have problems. And because of that, we often have mineral depletion and nervous system overload, like I said. So you can't really out hustle exhaustion, much as we want to, much as we may have in our 20s and 30s. Your body's done. It's over it. It's like, girl, I have taken care of you for 40 some years. Now you got to learn to take care of yourself, right?
Yeah. Or now you need to learn to take care of me.
Exactly. I'm not going to
Yes.
be compensating for you anymore. You got to figure it out. And so from there, you start to see this cascade. We start to see gut, liver, blood sugar imbalances, right? And it's not really, well, it isn't about willpower, right? It's about biology. So a lot of women start decreasing their calories and decreasing their calories because they start to see the weight creep up, even though they're doing all the same workouts and eating the same foods. And then they starve themselves. So they're getting fewer nutrients. They're not getting the minerals. And it's this never ending cycle, right? So then they go to the doctor, they get the everything looks fine trap answer because their labs may look normal from a traditional medicine perspective, but functionally the body is struggling. So again, the symptoms aren't random, they are data. Once you know what they mean, you can actually fix what's underneath.
So, what is the difference between a traditional medical range and a functional range?
So if you think of, let's say I'll use thyroid because that's a really easy one. A lot of women have their thyroid checked, TSH. The traditional medicine range is if it's over 4, they consider you hypothyroid, so a sluggish thyroid, sluggish metabolism. If you're at 4, holy cow, you are probably a mess. Your metabolism is completely tanked. You are exhausted all the time. You're probably dragging yourself around. You could feel that way at a 3. You could feel that way at 2.5. In functional medicine, the range is much tighter. It's like 0.5 to 2, right? And so from a functional perspective, when someone is over 2, I'm looking at why is your thyroid not working? Is it because your thyroid literally isn't working, like it's not producing thyroid hormone, which is usually not the case? Or is it because we don't have the minerals that it needs? Is it because your body's so stressed out? It's like, I don't need metabolism. I'm trying to get away from the tiger over here. Like, is it a gut health issue? Is it a liver issue? Because the liver is where the body converts the inactive T4, the thyroid hormone, to the active T3. So if your liver is overwhelmed and overloaded, that's not happening. Where is the problem? Where is the backup? And so that's why when you're looking at labs from a functional medicine perspective, it's very different, not only because the ranges are smaller, but in functional medicine, we're looking as to the why. Not that it is, but why is it? Because you can give somebody a thyroid medication if they're, let's say, over 4, but that's still not fixing the underlying problem. And I know lots and lots and lots of women who are on thyroid meds who have not had their weight loss fixed, have not had the fatigue fixed. And sometimes they do this yo-yo because it's like, I'm over medicated, I'm under medicated. It doesn't fix the underlying problem. And oftentimes it makes it worse.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you've been talking, there's been a thought started creeping in that's been a bit of a theme over the last little bit. And that is not only are we experiencing all of these symptoms, but we're also afraid of what is happening to our body. So now we also have this underlying fear, which is making everything in our body more challenging because we're sitting in this space of fear. I know I talk about this all the time, but it always breaks my heart whenever I facilitate a session. Always. Someone comes up to me at the end and says, Lisa, I thought I was in the early stages of dementia. And I've just been sitting in the fear of that, not knowing what to do. So, how do we help folks move through the fear so that they can actually use the information? Well, one, first, seek it out. Because when we're in that state of fear, we know we're fight, flight, freeze, right? But going and getting help is not necessarily one of those things. So how do we help people connect to their selves, understand why they're feeling this fear, and then take some action so they can actually start to feel better?
That is a great question. And I think for me and the people that I work with, releasing that fear or not having that fear anymore comes from understanding. It comes from the knowledge. And that's why I wrote the book. Even though we talk about testing in the book, 90% of this book is what you can do without having to do any testing, right? I give them a lot, I get a lot of extra bonus tools that you can get that talk about like how you can take what you're feeling, turn it into understanding, and turn that into action. And there are really three phases of it, which is decode, right? Decode is phase one. It's like identify the real stressors. And by stressors, I mean, what is stressing your body out on the inside, right? So is it mineral loss? Is it gut dysfunction? Is it hormone imbalances? Like decode what it is. Take your symptom and find out what's causing that. And then phase two is realign, right? We're rebuilding the foundations. So we need to make sure you're getting the right foods for your body, that you're getting the right minerals that you need, that you're getting enough sleep, because sleep is when our body repairs. And a lot of women struggle with sleep at this stage in life, that your body feels safe. So this nervous system realignment. And then stage three is reclaim, right? So we want to step back into our energy. We want to be able to focus again. We want to have confidence without a ton of restriction and definitely without burnout. Because when you support your body instead of fighting it, it will respond. You just need to know what it is you're looking at, right? If I'm looking at a text in Chinese and I don't speak Chinese, I'm not going to get much I'm not going to get anywhere. But if I had a decoder, if I had Google Translate, baby.
Yeah, it's helpful.
Yeah, so this is basically Google Translate for your body.
That's a really great way of thinking about it. And I think it can be very helpful because, part of that fear is sitting in this deep unknown of confusion, of just knowing like everything I used to do just doesn't work anymore. All the ways I used to feel just aren't that way. And I think it's hard on a lot of levels in that, you've felt a certain way for probably decades now, right? Yes, we have fluctuations, different life things happen, but you've been fairly stable and static for probably 20 years or so. And so we get into this, we sort of are lulled into this space of, well, I'm just always going to feel like this. And I can speak about that from my own perspective. I absolutely thought, like, this is how I am, right? This is how I will be forever. Because we don't want to face the reality that we are aging. And that is one of the pieces that I also find challenging. And I'm interested to hear your perspective and how you support people in that, because we can look at all of the data, we can put all of the best practices in place, we can do all of the things to have the best quality life health span that we can. And underneath all of that, we continue to age. And so there are going to be things that are challenging. And so I find sometimes people are like, well, like you said at the beginning, I've done all the right things, but I still feel differently. And so part of the conversation that I think is missing in the full menopause is this. Yes, we can do lots of things to improve your quality of life. And as long as you are on this planet, you are going to continue to age and things are going to continue to shift and change. And we have to acknowledge that and get used to the reality of like, this is going to be a process of responding for the rest of this third.
And I sometimes wonder, because obviously now we are starting to have the conversation. Our mothers didn't get to have this conversation. Our grandmothers certainly didn't have this conversation. And I wonder, is it because we are having more symptoms than women used to in the past? Or is it just because we are becoming more vocal about it? And part of me wonders if we did not have as many symptoms because we did not have as many stressors. And by stressors, I mean toxins in our environment. I mean poor food quality. I mean mental and emotional stress. Like there are a lot of like social media is a stress, right?
Mm,
All the
yeah,
things we have
absolutely.
coming at us every day and all of the expectations, not only from society that, but also that we put on ourselves. There's a lot more tearing away at our resilience than there was maybe for, say, my grandmother who grew up on a farm in Wisconsin, in, the 1920s, right? Like she was probably going through menopause in the 50s. So her day was pretty different than my day.
Yeah. I think this is an interesting point, and it's why we're seeing it bubble up in the workplace as well, because there are more women at this life stage in the workplace than there ever have been before. Which gets to your point also of, are we experiencing more symptoms because we have never historically, we haven't been in these positions before where there's this volume and that we have been living under the weight of all of this stress and expectation up until this time.
Right, exactly. And so if we don't learn to support our bodies in the way they need to be supported, our body will not have the resilience to say gracefully make this transition because it is a transition. We are changing, just like we changed in puberty, right? It's basically reverse puberty. So we're going through reverse puberty. We need to support our bodies in several ways because as estrogen drops, we lose that cortisol buffer, we lose the resilience, and so if we are not making up for it in other ways, it is going to feel harder. It is going to be harder. And so that is why I'm trying to help women with the tools they need to support their bodies so that it does not have to feel like you are trudging through mud, because that is how a lot of women feel. They feel like this is an uphill battle day after day after day, and nobody understands it, and nobody's giving me any grace, and it is just a slog, right? It doesn't need to be a slog.
Absolutely. So what are some of the shifts and changes? Because I think it's also important to know that, yeah, if you are in the slog, you can feel better. It doesn't have to stay this way forever. So what are some of the changes that you see in women who start addressing the messages that are coming from their body?
Well, when you start addressing the messages that are coming from your body, you're giving it the building blocks, the foundations of what it needs to actually do its work, right? The body is trying to do a job. And because of all the things we've thrown at it, it's kind of like if you're trying to drive down a road and you have these trees that are falling all over the place, the body is like doing all these detours, which takes a lot more energy and it takes a lot more brain power. So when we address our mineral imbalances, when we get the right amount of sleep, when we support our blood sugar, when we move our bodies, when we address our nervous system overload, all of these things are giving our body that cellular support it needs to do the daily tasks. If we take away all of the roadblocks, it has a straight road to travel on and it can actually do its job much more efficiently. We will feel better. We won't have all of these symptoms knocking on our doors anymore because the body won't be like, hey, pay attention. It's like, cool, we got this. This is great.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so, where would you suggest someone start, right? Because it can feel very overwhelming. So, if there was one practice someone could take away from this conversation and start immediately, what would
Well, I mean, obviously, if you read the book, you'll have a lot of options, right? So, but I am right now, I'm speaking to somebody that I don't know where they are, right? They may have various different symptoms. But one thing that I see most women need is magnesium. Because when our body is stressed, our body burns through three things. It burns through magnesium, potassium, and B vitamins. So if you are a person who's in chronic stress, you likely need one, if not all of those things. So, and some people who have GI issues, they may not be able to take magnesium in oral form. So I recommend either magnesium lotion or Epsom salt baths are great. Epsom salt baths are great for a few things. One, you're forced to sit down in a bath for 20 to 30 minutes. And even if you don't want to take a full bath, you could do a foot soak, right? Epsom salt foot soak. So that's number one. Two, you're absorbing magnesium through your skin, which means it's going directly to your bloodstream. It's not impacting your bowels if you have bowel issues. And what is the third thing I always say about Epsom salt baths? Well, you're also getting sulfur, which is helpful. It's helpful in your body in a variety of ways, including in your thyroid. So you're getting all of these nutrients. You're forced to relax. You're getting it topically. So that's a great one. And then potassium, a lot of women that I work with, I have them do what's called an adrenal cocktail. You may have heard of it. Mine is a little bit different than others because I don't want it to have a blood sugar spike. So I always do my adrenal cocktail every day. I do 4 cups of water with half a squeeze of lemon, which is your vitamin C, and a quarter teaspoon of Celtic salt, like a highly mineralized salt, not table salt, but something like Celtic salt or red mint salt, and then a quarter teaspoon of cream of tartar, which is the potassium.
Hmm.
Or you could
I
do
did
coconut.
not know that.
Yeah, and that is really supportive for people who have adrenal issues. Now, caveat with that, if you have high blood pressure, speak to your physician first. If you have blood labs, it's really great to see where your sodium and potassium levels are to see if you need more. Yeah, when we run the HTMA, which is the mineral test, we can see where each of those levels are to know specifically which version of that to give you, because some people need more salt, some people need more potassium. But those minerals are really key for just everything in your body. And some women, I've worked with women who they just get more energy from those alone.
Right.
Because when you have, strangely, I know that salt or sodium has been vilified, but when you have more sodium in your bloodstream, you have more energy.
And that speaks to the really knowing yourself and where you're at now and not just relying on traditional wisdom that we know has been disproven over time. And the salt one has been really challenging for me because in my early teens, which would have been the early mid 90s, that was like the peak of no salt, right? And my grandfather had some cardiac issues. And so my mom's side of the whole family, there was no salt in anything. And so I spent my whole life not putting salt in anything.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And now understanding that salt is actually an important part and I am in a pretty significant depletion, adding that back in it's undoing all of those stories that are so deeply ingrained in what we were, the nutrition, diet culture, health information ocean we were swimming in at that time. And so those are really great, very specific suggestions that literally someone could do as soon as you stop listening to this podcast. You can do some of those things immediately. Epsom salts are easily available. We can go and get those. And I love we were laughing, but it also breaks my heart that we have to force ourselves to relax.
Yes. Yes, we do. We have to put it in our calendar. We have to make time for it.
And it's again that heartbreak of like, well, we feel like we have to earn the relaxation. And that if we are relaxing, well, we're not doing anything productive. I still find that script running in my head. Like my husband has done absolutely nothing to support this idea in my brain. But if he comes home and I'm not like at my desk in the kitchen, cleaning, doing something, I question my own value. And that is something that women of our generation, it's deep, right? It's part of you can do it all, you can do it all, and you can have it all. The sacrifice of that was ourselves.
You can, but should you?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
I will say that I had to go through 2 major health issues to undo that. One was I got mold toxicity, which basically completely takes you out. It wipes out all of your systems. And that took me 3 years from beginning to end to get through. And the second was I broke my ankle in 3 spots.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like if the universe wasn't telling me to chill out, that was a big, because I literally couldn't move. I couldn't walk. My husband had to bring up my food on a tray every day. I mean, for 2 weeks, I was bedbound. It
Yeah.
just, if there's, don't wait till this sign, ladies. Do not wait.
Yeah, absolutely. Do not wait and have these conversations. I was having this conversation with a young teenager in my life who I love very much. And it's so interesting hearing their perspective because they're like, "Yeah, no, we don't actually want to do what you've done." I was like, "Good. I'm glad you have learned that lesson from us." And absolutely, start now. Start valuing yourself and your health and all of the things that you need to do. start now. And that goes for wherever you are on that spectrum, right? If you are in the heat of perimenopause, start valuing yourself and who you are right now. And the Midlife Body Code can really help you with that. So, Claudine, thank you so much for being with us today. There's some really great practices that I know folks can take away from this conversation. And all of the contact information and how to get your hands on the Midlife Body Code will be in the show notes. So be sure to check it out.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great being here.
Thank you for hanging out with me on Transforming 45. If you laughed, nodded, or had an oh wow moment, hit follow and share it with your favorite midlife human. Find me on Instagram at @lboat and keep those transformations coming.
Electric acid.